Thank you very much, Meredith. The work I will talk about today is joined with my two colleagues, David Huffman and Colin Raymond, and is generously funded by the Keynes Fund for Economic Research. This work is part of a bigger project with a firm that has started as a conversation at an alumni event. So I'm particularly grateful for the chance to talk about it in front of this audience as a small way of giving back. Overconfidence is a pervasive human bias, and most of us have come across overconfidence in our lives. Many researchers, philosophers, thinkers alike talk about how it is one of the most fundamental human biases. And when we say that overconfidence is a bias, what we mean is that one's perception of oneself, one's skills, ability, or job performance is at odds with reality in a particular direction, better than actual. Turns out, however, that not much is known about overconfidence. And the reason for this is that not much systematic data are available that would allow robust and quantitative analysis. The data that we have right now mostly come from IQ tests on student volunteers, where students are invited into a lab. There they're given an IQ test and they're asked to rank themselves against the others. This is the main evidence we have for the fact that people are overconfident. Students in the lab tend to rank themselves higher than actual. This is an important first step, but it begs a number of important questions. First, what happens to overconfidence beyond student volunteers? Is this an issue in the real world, so to speak, beyond the lab? Second, being overconfident about one's IQ performance is one thing, but what matters when we're talking about some more important things in life, like job performance, where your paycheck may be on the line? Finally, will overconfidence persist when people have a lot of experience and get a lot of feedback about their performance? And if it does persist, then the question is, why does it persist? As I mentioned, the problem with answering these questions is lack of data. As you can imagine, just approaching people and asking, are you overconfident, is not going to allow us to collect the kind of data we want. So we've been very lucky to be able to partner with a firm. It's a chain of food and drink stores that have allowed us to study their store managers. We analyze their potential overconfidence about their job performance. So something that's quite central to their lives and something they have a lot of experience in. And as I will show you in a minute, get lots of feedback on. So to give you some context about how managers operate in this company, they're rewarded for their performance through a quarterly competition where all the managers and their stores are ranked depending on various performance metrics. Based on this ranking, managers get paid a quarterly bonus. This ranking is public in the sense that all of the managers know their own ranking as well as the ranking of other managers. Furthermore, managers receive nearly weekly feedback on their rank. So in other words, although their bonus depends only on the rank that's received at the end of the quarter, in the interim, managers receive weekly information on how they would rank if the competition was held right now. We have about 240 managers in our sample, and the average manager has spent 2.5 years with the firm. This implies that they have seen 10 quarterly competition and received 125 weeks of feedback. That's a lot of ranking of their performance that they have seen. The question we ask is, given all this information that the managers receive, are they realistic about this performance, about their performance? This is how we're going to analyze this. We asked the managers to predict their rank in the upcoming firm competition. In other words, we conducted this study in October 2015, and we asked the managers to predict what rank they will have at the end of that quarter, fourth quarter of 2015, when their firm holds its quarterly competition. We asked the managers to put themselves into one of 5 quintiles of the ranking. So top 20%, next 20%, and so on down to bottom 20%. We explained to the managers that later we will compare their predictions to the actual performance that happened in that quarter. Furthermore, we paid managers to get the prediction right to minimize possible biases. Finally, we promised the managers that their individual predictions will be kept confidential. I'm going to now show you some results, but before I do that, let me tell you about the model that we construct in the paper. Without boring you with details, I will just say that the model predicts that if the managers process their information correctly, because of the amount of information they're getting in this firm, they should be predicting their performance accurately. What does it mean? If I plot managers' predictions on a graph where on the horizontal axis, I have each of the quintiles and the 5th quintile is the best performance, then we should expect roughly 20% of the managers to be in each quintile. Let me now show you what actual manager predictions look like. So the first slide I'm going to show you plots the manager predictions in each quintile. As we see, 20% of managers predict 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quintile. So that's just as what our model predicts. However, only 10% of managers think they're going to be in the bottom quintile, and over 30% of managers think that they're going to be in the top quintile. So already we see substantial evidence of overconfidence among these managers, despite all the information they're getting. The second thing we can do is to compare their predictions to their actual performance at the end of the quarter. This comparison allows us to classify managers into 3 groups: underconfident, accurate, and overconfident. What we see is about 20% of managers are underconfident, about 30% are accurate, and nearly 50% are overconfident. So although there is some variation here clearly within this group, the prevalent behavior here is that of overconfidence. The next question we ask is, how come this happens? How is it possible that despite all this information that the managers receive, they persist in their overconfidence? What is it that our brains are doing to stop the information coming through? And here we draw on existing theories developed by psychologists and more lately economists, and particularly the theory of selective memory. This theory says that the feeling of confidence is so important to us that in order to maintain a positive view of ourselves, our brain will make efforts to process information selectively. In other words, when we receive good news, our brain will retain them. But when we receive bad news that might undermine our ego, we will forget them, and in fact might substitute them with fake, flattering memories. To test whether this is something that might be going on with our managers, we also asked our managers to recall what their rank was in the previous competition in their company, so in the previous quarter. Again, we explained that we had the actual results and we would compare the manager's recall to what actually happened happened and pay them if their memories were accurate. I will summarize the results that we have in 2 slides. The first slide is for those of us who like the great American novel. And the second slide is a little bit more quantitative. On the horizontal axis, I'm going to plot the actual performance of these managers, where the smaller ranks are the best ranks. On the vertical axis, I will plot what managers recalled in our exercise. The red line is the line of accuracy. So if managers recall their performance accurately, they will cluster along this red line. If, however, managers' memories are mostly unflattering, they recall performance that's worse than actual, the managers will cluster below the red line. If the opposite is true and managers recall better than actual performance, they will cluster above the red line. So this is what we see when we plot the actual data. A few things to notice. First of all, there is a positive correlation between the actual and recalled rank, which implies that the data that we're getting are meaningful, they're not random guesses. Second, when managers do well, so we are in the top right-hand corner of this graph, they recall their performance pretty accurately. They don't make mistakes. But as managers' performance worsens, mistakes start to appear. And the final thing to notice is that these mistakes are predominantly in one direction. What we see is that the points are mostly clustered above the red line of accuracy, which means that managers are systematically recalling better than actual performance. In other words, this is consistent with the theories of selective memory, where our brain discards the information that may be threatening to our ego and substitutes good news for it instead. So we've shown with you that managers are overconfident and have selected and flattering memories. Moreover, because there is variation among managers in our sample, we can show that it is the managers who are more likely to be overconfident, that they are also more likely to have selective memories. So overconfidence and selective memory are linked at an individual level. Of course, the sample of our managers is highly selective, but nevertheless, we can summarize our findings in 3 bullet points. First of all, this is one of the first pieces of systematic evidence for overconfidence in the workplace. We showed that overconfidence persists despite information. And finally, that selective memory helps maintain overconfidence. There are several implications of this. The first and the most straightforward one is that it questions the role of feedback in the workplace. We've shown that the managers don't always take on board negative feedback. The second is that rank clearly matters. Finally, there is a more subtle implication. Forgetting facts selectively is a costly process that we show our brain is prepared to engage in to maintain overconfidence. This suggests that there is a significant value or benefit of overconfidence to individuals. This not only means that this is going to be a bias that's very difficult to get rid of, it also raises a question of whether it might be a good idea at all to get rid of this bias. It begs the question of what is the impact of overconfidence, for example, in a workplace setting. This is an important area for further research. Our paper has some preliminary findings on this, but to answer the question, we need different data and different analysis. This is very much a part of our ongoing research agenda. Finally, I would like to leave you with 2 further implications. This was only one piece of research, but it contributes to the idea that economists should take psychology seriously in their research. It also shows that collaboration between firms and academics can bring big insights. So if you have any comments or indeed some data that you think might be interesting to look at, do please get in touch. Thank you very much.